Welcome to 16 in the 6. I'm your host, Jeff Barrett with Business Interiors. Thank you for joining us today. The purpose of this interview series is for the close-knit Toronto commercial real estate industry to share ideas and best practices. Joining us today is Chantal Frenette, Director at M Moser Associates. Chantal, thank you for joining us.
Nice to be here, Jeff.
Can you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
I'm director with M Moser Associates, located in Toronto. And I joined the company late last year in the middle of a pandemic and in the middle of a never-ending Toronto lockdown. And I'm really excited to bring our global capabilities to the local market. So nice to talk to you today.
Personally, how are you managing?
I think I'm doing pretty well. All things considered, I feel that I'm quite privileged. I have everything that I need. I have a really great setup at home, and I have great support. But I'm not going to lie, there are days where, as the New York Times call it, I'm in a state of languishing. It does get challenging on certain days, but I think I'm doing pretty well.
Can you show me what face mask you've been rocking?
Sure. Well, I'm pretty practical. So it's anything that's black or white or gray. But the face mask that I have right now is something that was sent to me in my first week of starting at M Moser. I received this wonderful care package from our community manager in New York with, the laptop and some swag and some, a handwritten note. And, beginning a new job in the middle of a pandemic, it was actually really nice to have something personal to welcome me to the team. So I keep this very close to me.
So Chantal, in a new segment, we take a deep dive on our guests' LinkedIn accounts and look for posts that need more context. 3 months ago, you shared that you've officially completed the requirements for the Master of Design and Strategic Foresight and Innovation at OCAD-U. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, this was an extra layer of challenge in the middle of a pandemic, but 2.5 years ago, I decided to go back to school and do a Master in Design, a graduate program in Strategic Foresight and Innovation at OCAD-U. I knew a number of people who had done the program and came out of that with a completely new outlook on how to solve for complex problems. And so, I decided to take that on. It's a very demanding program that I started while I was working full-time and had 2 kids. I have 2 kids at home. And so it's been very challenging, but I recently completed my final project with my brilliant colleague, Robin Frybantz. And so this was looking at how to increase futures thinking capacity within various organizations. So it was a really neat deep dive into foresight strategy.
That's great. And it looks like we can download the document if we want to take a bigger look.
You can. It's about 75 pages. So we do have a shortened version if you're interested in it.
All right, everyone, reach out to Chantal. Can you tell us about some of the projects you're involved in and how they've changed course?
Sure. Well, I mean, we're currently working with a client here in Toronto where we had a very successful relationship with that particular client in New York, and they are looking at the future of the workplace for their Toronto office. And so they were looking at a 2-site consolidation and how how can we rethink the role of the office. And so we did the typical, feasibility planning for them, trying to understand the different models that we might be able to put forward. But I think in the end, what's important to keep in mind is that the only constant is continuous change. And so we need to prepare our clients for the fact that whatever we design for them cannot be designed for a point in time. It actually has to be designed for continuous change. And so rather than designing, a simple solution or a singular solution, we're really designing for flexibility and adaptability in the future. And so giving them multiple scenarios to understand if things change, if your head count grows, for instance, what might the future of that space look like? If it shrinks, if you have a new acquisition, what might that look like? If you bring on a different service, how will the work process change, and how can the physical environment support that? If there are developments in technology, how might that impact the space? And so rather than designing for a point in time, we're really designing for adaptability and flexibility.
That's a great point. And it makes me think back to the past 10 to 15 years where every client told us they wanted flexibility.
Right.
And it was always kind of a chuckle in the furniture industry because the furniture that people were requesting or specifying wasn't necessarily more flexible than others. And so it was kind of just something that people always said, yeah, we want to be flexible for the future. But I feel like there's a much bigger magnifying glass on flexibility now. So I'm just curious, what do you think flexibility means?
Well, and I think the definition of flexibility has really evolved over the years, and part of that is really what's available on the market, right? I mean, until technology was flexible, it's really hard to specify the furniture to be flexible. And so, I think 10 to 15 years ago, flexible meant that you could have your real estate or facilities people come and knock down a few panels and move furniture around, and that was the definition of flexibility. Now it has moved towards more of a user-focused level of flexibility. And so understanding that spaces are no longer just what I call a warehouse for desks. Space is really the experience. The workplace is really the workplace is really the place where the experience happens. And so we need to build those spaces to attract people, to support the work that they do, to engage them, to inspire them. And so when you're thinking of, this is actually a really important point, that as we start to work from home or get used to working from home in the past year, most of us are not doing all of the work in a single room, always sitting at the same chair. We like to spend our days, I actually follow the sun in my house. So I love to spend the morning on the east side of the house having my coffee, and then the afternoon on the west side, just to catch the sun. So there are different experiences that I love having at home. And I think that's the expectation of people when they come back to the office, is that they also want to have a certain level of personalization and adaptability when they come back to the office.
What changes do you see coming to the commercial office post-vaccine?
Right. What I would add to that is that if the metrics have changed, if the role of the office has changed, then certainly the size of the office will change. Certainly the quality of the office will change, and certainly the experience of being in the office will change. And so what we're seeing, and this is early days, but for the most part, clients are really looking for a reduction in real estate. That really varies based on the client and the location and the cost of their real estate and the type of work that they do. But I would say that generally most of our clients are looking for somewhat of a reduction in their real estate. I would say that most clients that we work with have accepted, the fact that the future of work will be some sort of, hybrid work version. And I hate to use that word because everybody uses the word hybrid, and I think we could have a whole discussion. We could have a whole podcast on what does hybrid work. But I think for the most part, organizations are fully supporting the fact that their employees will continue to work remotely for a portion of the time. What they're really struggling with is how they will return to work. How do we make sure that we maintain those connections, maintain collaboration, maintain productivity, maintain connection when people are coming to work 2-3 days a week, maybe more, maybe less?
Here's a challenge, not necessarily a design challenge per se, but a conversation that I have often is thinking about the future meeting where half of the room is in the room and the other half is at home, and what an awful experience that's going to be. Do you have any ideas around how to make that a better experience?
Well, I've had the same conversations with many people, and I do want to start by saying that I don't think any of us fully realize the impact of what this dual frontier is going to look like. And so I think that at the moment, we're relying very much on technology because most of us are working from home. And prior to COVID, we were much more reliant on the face-to-face interaction because we had that capability of meeting face-to-face. But I don't think any of us have really been able to solve for what that experience is going to be when part of us, part of the group is going to be remote and part will be in person. I think this goes, there's a couple of connections to that. One is on the expectation, sort of the HR piece of things, the expectation of the team, and whether there is a bias for in-person or an expectation that people should be in person rather than remote. And so there's a question of equity in that as well. And so I think technology is really going to have to solve part of that puzzle. So I think technology that's much more experiential, that is able to zoom in on participants and pick up sound in a much better way than what we're experiencing right now, sitting in front of a screen, is going to be important. I also think that collaborative tools are going to have to change quite a bit because right now we're sort of lazy. We're relying on this face-to-face interaction through Zoom or through Teams, but we really have not solved for the interactive piece of collaboration. And so, I think it's going to have an impact not only on how we design space, but how we design space with technology. But also, as I mentioned, what are some of the protocols that we put in action to support those behaviors?
Do you think the holograms are coming?
Yes. I hope so.
I hope so too. That'd be so cool.
I never want to see my own hologram, but I'm hopeful that we can start to see that. Absolutely. I mean, it's coming up, and certainly with the developments in technology that is moving so fast. I'm sure somebody much smarter than me is working on that right now, but I do think that the experiential piece has not been solved for quite yet, and so we're going to start to see those gaps as we return to the office, and again use old tools to solve new problems. It's going to become much more apparent that we need new tools to solve for these.
So Chantal, for the product review section, I'll be honest, I'm just getting a little bored of trying to find interesting topics or products to talk about. So conversation starter today, I thought we'd talk about some of the things that are pushed to us in the media. It drives me a little crazy sometimes, some of the things that we hear, specifically around these surveys. Everyone has surveyed a whole bunch of people, and we hear these, we surveyed 5,000 people from around the world, and guess what? Everyone wants a hybrid workplace. I think you would have got the same answers pre-COVID. But these are the things that are pushed to us as these like groundbreaking, research initiatives. Some of the other things just about the future of work and how so many people have predicted what that's going to be. What are your thoughts on some of the research that's being pushed out there, and how are we supposed to tackle this and make sense of it for our clients?
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I mean, much of my job really is to understand the research and read what's out there. And there's certainly been some wonderful research pieces that I've read and have dug into. What I would say is surveys are one of many potential research inputs when we're working with clients. And so what surveys tell you is, first of all, they're highly flawed because they're self-reported. So anybody who answers a survey, there's a bias in terms of how they read the questions and how they make sense of the questions. They're also biased in the sense that it is a point in time. So many of those surveys that you're reading, people are experiencing lockdown, they're experiencing a lot of mental stress and challenges, and they also don't really know what they will want in the future. It really is a point in time, and they can probably imagine what they want, but it is really a point in time. And so I would say that surveys can give you a lot of great data, but it really is what you do with that data and how you make sense of that data that matters. The other thing that I would say is that, as I mentioned, surveys are really one research method, and you really do need to overlay and triangulate and support with many other different research inputs. What I have found in my experience is when you have the one-on-one interaction with your client, and whether it be, top down through leadership or bottom up with with your employees, you really start to put some color to it and understanding the qualitative elements behind some of that data. Back to your question in terms of, would people have responded in the same way prior to COVID as they would during COVID? I can tell you that I did surveys prior to COVID, and you're absolutely right. The feedback was the same. Surveys prior to COVID came back overwhelmingly, respondents saying that they would want to work remotely 2 to 3 days a week. And so that has not significantly changed during COVID. I would say that management attitudes towards remote working has completely changed. I think our ability and our confidence in working from home has also changed. We've also developed new processes. We've developed new ways of working. We've developed new ways of communicating with one another. So certainly our confidence and our experience has gone up. But in terms of employee sentiment and what they're looking for, that has not significantly changed.
I love some of what you said there. And, another thing I struggle, you mentioned this like kind of point in time when we're asking people, well, we're also asking them to kind of be workplace experts, right? And, like what does the average employee really know about, those functions of the office and those activities taking place? As well, we're going to really struggle, and I see clients issuing these surveys to their employees, is sometimes how we ask a question. It's like, if I ask you, Chantal, what do you need to complete your job? And you tell me a list of things that you need to complete your job. If I can't accommodate that as an employer, now all of a sudden it's worse than me not asking you what you need to complete your job, right? Because you've all of a sudden created an expectation that I'm going to act on what you tell me. And so we ask these employees, like, would you prefer to work from home? Well, obviously. Where I think it's like, why don't we talk about the activities and what's happening in their day-to-day and understand the challenges that are faced from being at home, not do they prefer to be at home or the office?
So I would completely agree with you that, what I would say is that most people answer surveys based on their own experience, right? I mean, it's called personal bias. And so we all do it. We all have our personal biases, and that's how we respond to things. And so I think this is the reason why at M Moser, all of our design engagements are led through strategic engagements. And so this is really about translating those needs into creative solutions and being able to communicate those to people. And so I've heard you talk about change management quite a bit on this podcast, and we have in the past as well. And there are many different ways of engaging with clients, but it's really taking them through this transformation. And so you can't just ask people what they want, give them something completely different, and then expect them to just deal with it. It's really taking them on this journey so that they come to that solution themselves. I mean, we're the experts in we have the knowledge and the expertise in terms of workplace design and the trends and the products and so on. But when you're working with a group of individuals who don't have exposure to some of those new ideas, we can't expect them to get to that same point as we would. And so it's really working with them to really truly understand not only how they're working, but what some of the fears and challenges might be. How might we support them better through different solutions, and then coming up with creative solutions to those challenges.
Chantal, is there anything else you want the SIGs to know about you or M Moser Associates?
I think just want to let everybody know that we're here in Toronto. We're really excited to bring our global talent and our expertise to the local market. We're really excited about growing our talented team here, and just really looking forward to the future.
Well, thank you, Chantal, for sharing how you and M Moser are helping with the Toronto commercial real estate industry. Keep up the good work.
Thanks. Thanks, Jeff.
Toronto, you are the best city in the world, and we can't wait for you to feel better again.
Rather than looking at metrics such as, square foot per person and so on and so forth, we're really having to challenge those that old thinking and those old metrics. And so I've lost my train of thought there. That was not a complete idea.